This assignment is going to cover a new adjustment called photo filters. So there are two parts. The first part is going to show you how to create this first image here with the Grand Canyon. The second image is going to show you how to enhance a landscape. So to get started, make sure you have Photoshop open with nothing open inside of it. And you want to begin by downloading the first image here of the canyon. You want to make sure that you hit the download button here at the top. Once it downloads, you want to click and drag it down into Photoshop. Then you want to go back and download the second image of the legs. And this you're going to drag on top of the Grand Canyon image. They should be about the same size, so once you drag it in, you want to hit enter to get rid of that transform mode. Then you want to go over and rasterize the leg image. So I'm going to right click on this part of the layer and rasterize. From here, I want to select just the legs and get rid of the rest of this background here on the leg image, so that way it shows the Grand Canyon underneath. So I think the easiest way is to probably grab your quick selection tool. And from here, I'm going to make my brush using my bracket key just a little bit larger. And I'm just going to click, try to select the legs as best as possible. So I'm clicking, kind of dragging around. I'm going to make my quick selection brush a little smaller. You can do so with your bracket keys, or if you prefer, you can adjust it up here. All right, that looks fairly good. So from here, I'm going to put a layer mask on this layer. You'll see it popped up there. Because I selected the legs, Photoshop knows that that's what I wanted to keep, so I don't have to inverse my layer mask. So from here, I'm going to zoom in with Control+, and I can see here that I missed a few little parts. So I'm just going to add those back in by grabbing my paintbrush. I want to make sure my paintbrush has more of a harder edge. So if it's around 90 to 100%, you should be good. And I want to make sure that my foreground color is white. So I'm going to go in, make sure I'm on my layer mask over here. And I'm going to paint in. I'm going to make sure my opacity of my brush is 100%. So I'm going to paint in the parts that I missed. And then I can also see that I have a little bit of the background here in between the shoelaces. So I'm going to switch my brush to black, and I'm going to hide these pixels. Another thing you're going to notice oftentimes when you're selecting parts of images and masking them is sometimes you'll have this halo effect. So you'll see around the shoes and the pants a little bit of the other background kind of peeking through, and it almost looks like a halo. So that's why they call it the halo effect. So I'm just going to go through and tidy up the edges using my black brush and just get rid of some of that extra halo popping up. So this, I mean, all part of Photoshop to make it look good is just to take your time and be patient with it. If you rush it, you can really tell. And that's when bad Photoshops happen. And remember, if you go too close, you can always hit X on your keyboard to switch it back to white. I don't think I like this little bit here, so I'm going to get rid of that. Again, I'm going to clean up this side a little bit. Over here on the pants, just make sure you're using black to hide and white to bring back pixels if you have to. At this point, you're probably getting fairly comfortable with layer masks, so you probably get the idea. Okay. All right, so I'm going to zoom back out with Control minus. Looks like my image, I need to move it down. So I'm going to grab my move tool, and then I'm just going to move that down just slightly. All right, so looking at this image, because they're taken from two different photographs, merging them into one, they call that a composite. I can tell that the leg image was taken in a environment with more of a cooler light, whereas the Grand Canyon has more of a sunset, warm light tone. So that's where photo filters come in. So I'm going to go down to my adjustment layers button where you find hue saturation, and you should see an option called photo filter a little over halfway down. So I'm going to click that. This window should pop up, and photo filters, you have a lot to choose from. So like, for example, if you're working with an underwater image and you're putting somebody underwater who wasn't underwater, this will come in handy. However, we're actually going to just stick with the first photo filter. We're just going to warm up the leg image. When I bring up the density, I kind of click and drag that up. You'll notice this warming everything. I actually don't need to warm up both images. I just want to warm the leg image. So to do that, down here at the bottom of the window, you should see a button that looks almost like a layer with an arrow pointing down. If I click that, it tells my adjustment layer that it's only going to affect the layer directly beneath it. So now when I adjust the slider, you can see it's not affecting the Grand Canyon image, and it's just affecting the legs. So that's perfect. So the density, I would set it around, I think, between 70 and 80 is a good density. So, because if it's too much, it's going to start to look fake. You still want to keep some of this natural color in there. Just give it a little bit of a warm tone. So once you get this photo filter set, you want to go ahead and save this to your U drive and upload it to Classroom. So once you do that, I'm done with this image. So let's pretend I saved it and uploaded it. Okay, you're going to save. The next image is the dull landscape. So make sure you have nothing open in Photoshop. Download this landscape image. Drag it into Photoshop. And what I want to do is I want to almost saturate the colors, but not an overall saturation. I want to warm up parts of the image, cool off parts of the image to really give it more of a, almost like more of a pop. So I'm going to grab my quick selection again, and I'm going to select the sky. I'm going to go ahead and make sure my brush is a little larger so it's not as slow. Okay. So I just want the sky. So this did a pretty good job. So I'm going to go back down to my adjustment layers, select photo filter, and let's use, instead of the warming filter, we're going to use magenta. And you'll see here, this is before. I want to set it to about 30%. Okay, so I'm done with this one. I'm going to go back to my background layer, and this time I'm going to select the ground here. Okay, this one I'm going to add a photo filter. That's a warming filter. So I'm going to go ahead and bring this up, let's say to about 80%. Okay, when I've done that, you'll see that, let me toggle this off, the water is also brown because I warmed up the water as well. I really want just the ground and the grass here and the plants to be more of a warm color. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my paintbrush, make sure it's kind of like a softer brush, so around 10%. Now I'm going to go in, zoom in. I'm actually going to, on this warming filter that I made, it should be the second one here. I'm going to make sure I'm on the layer mask. And I'm going to paint black because I want to tell that photo filter that I don't want it to affect this part of the image. So I'm going to paint in the water to make it blue again. You got to kind of work really carefully around kind of the plants here. I'm going to grab a tiny, tiny brush, just kind of pop in a little bit of blues, like little pixel by pixels to give it kind of a more natural look. Okay, so I'm just clicking around. And you want to take your time on this. Okay. And just add a few pixels here. All right, so I'm going to zoom out. And it should, the water should look very blue. From here, I'm going to show you a new adjustment layer. So go back down to your adjustment layers. And this time select brightness contrast. We're just going to boost the contrast to really make this image pop even more. So I'm just going to make the contrast a little bit stronger, say about 50. And you'll see here without the contrast, like adding that contrast layer really brightens the image up. Okay, so from here, that's all we're doing with this image. So go ahead and save it and upload it to Classroom.